Miss Bögli, on your 21st birthday, you had a near-death experience. Can you tell us the story? Well, I was attending a business weekend, and I was really not very happy about that because it was my birthday. During the teamwork and the different meetings, I realized that I had a touch of cystitis, but I thought I could cure it during the week to come. So I just continued to work. But it kept getting worse, and it resulted in an acute case of paelitis with severe pains. And so the ambulance was called, and they brought me to the hospital with blue lights. I really had severe pains, and I could hardly speak. It was really rather intense, and they hooked me up to an infusion while still in the ambulance. And when they brought me to the hospital, I was told that they would put me in a room where I should wait for the doctor who would check my kidneys and who would perform an ultrasound examination, so that I should just simply wait. The doctor came to see me many minutes later. He looked at me and he was obviously shocked by something. Then he looked down to the ground and he then started messing about with the infusion tubes, just saying that there was a crack in the infusion line and that consequently blood was being pulled out of my body, was intended to be infused into my body. In that way, I would have lost quite a bit of blood, and that it would actually be better that I not look down on the floor. And he immediately went for help. He ran out of the examination room, and I only heard him screaming, "Please, all of you who are able, come to the examining room immediately." So judging from the tone of his voice, I thought that this must be something unusual. And then I also thought, well, I'm not that sensitive to blood. So I decided to take a look down on the floor. And looking beside the hospital bed, I got deeply troubled because this examination room was not small, but the whole floor was covered with blood. I thought for a moment, geez, this is a lot of blood, such a large amount of blood down there, even adding the contribution from the infusion fluid. And so the reaction of the physicians was correspondingly strong. The doctor who had intended to examine me before, the nurse, they all came in order to clean the floor from the blood. Well, all this was indeed unusual. Subsequently, I was not examined there in the examination room, but was brought straightway to the intensive care unit, where I stayed, and as one knows, the practices of an emergency unit, there are curtains to the left and to the right of your bed, and the patient is connected to different devices recording physiological data. There in the intensive care unit, I still had a lot of pain, physical pain, and I didn't know how to position myself into the bed to be comfortable. I had extreme pain. Later on in my life, I had 3 births, but the pains I had in connection with the cystitis were simply indescribable. Then suddenly I felt as if the room behind me had changed. This means that suddenly I had no more pain, and I felt as if the room behind me would open. The walls, in this case the curtains of this room, suddenly dissolved, so that I found myself in another room. But I did not see my body from above or something like that, but I was in this other room in the form of a soul. And this awareness was simply, well, I would say, indescribable. That means not easy to describe in human terms. You have said that you were in this other room in the form of a soul. Yes, yes. Did you also see your material body there? Not at all. I was completely separated from my body, and I no longer perceived it anywhere, contrary to what other people say. And also, I was not in a tunnel or anything like it, but I was really, let me say, in the next room. and there was pure light, like a light yellow, very bright light, is how I would describe it. But neither did it dazzle, nor was it too hot for me. It was just pure shelteredness. There, shelteredness, pure love, simply unconditional love, freedom, infinity of the being. Well, it's indescribably beautiful, and in my case, I was first allowed to enjoy this place, this state, for a moment. And first, I also did not perceive other beings or so, but I simply was so sheltered, floating. But then there was more or less a recall, like, "Hello, you have not yet finished. There is one more thing waiting for you." And then I saw an angel on my left side. How I would describe it. In fact, this was not an angel, as usually illustrated in the pictures or shown in paintings, but it was a formless white figure, and around it a golden gleam, with a bright golden yellow shimmer around this luminous appearance. It was a giant figure. I realized that this appearance was a kind of companion for me in this phase. So this angel showed me my present situation on earth, and that I had not yet finished with it. So I had to view the present situation on earth, which I would leave behind, thereby seeing my apartment with the dirty laundry, as well as with the still unpaid bills of the month, and this is meant in the truest sense of the word. I realized I would leave all this behind. I simply realized my whole earthly situation as it was. I realized it 100%, namely with increased consciousness, I'd say, very clearly. I saw all this somehow three-dimensionally, and for a moment I really had the impression that I was inside my apartment and therefore able to say goodbye to my earthly existence as such. And so I also was shown my closest relatives, which means that I was allowed to say goodbye quite consciously to my loved ones. Then I was aware of what this farewell would mean to the bereaved relatives. And as for me, the situation was specific, because at the same time I was in hospital, my father was in one hospital, suffering from an incurable form of leukemia, and my elderly grandmother was also seriously ill, and she was in yet another hospital. So I realized, now I just simply will die. It will be very hard for my family, because their focus was quite different, because my father had already been ill for several months, and it was all about his health and his disease and his blood values and about everything feasible. And there were also worries about my grandmother. And under these circumstances, I would simply have passed away. I knew that it's going to be tough for them. I knew exactly how bad it would be for each one of them. But nevertheless, I also knew that it was okay, and that was good when I die now. Did you perceive your father? Well, I saw pretty much all of my bereaved family members on the same level. You know, the ones I would have left behind, no matter if they were in good health or not. But I did not realize their mental state at that very moment, no matter where they might have been, but I perceived their souls, one might say three-dimensionally, and I could say goodbye to each individual. Well, the specific thing was that I felt that I had enough time to do so. There was no stress, and it was based on the motto, buck up, you've got to say goodbye now. The angel is waiting. But I really had time to do all this with all my heart and very conscientiously. And having finished saying goodbye to all of them, I approached the angel once again and said to him quite deliberately, if it's time for me to pass away now, I will join you. Then I didn't even have time to think. I just felt a jerk, and I was back in my body, suffering pain again. And well, this was really hard, but I didn't have a choice. But it was clear to me that I would leave this earth and I would die leaving behind this life. Well, then if life still went on, and for a moment this was very hard for me, because on the one hand I suffered physical pain again, and on the other hand it was very hurtful to be forced to go back into this narrowness, as in this case into my body, actually being too small for a soul, and back into a world which actually is much too cold and too rigid, and compared with the reality prevailing after death, my return to earth left a lot to be desired. Nevertheless, it was also nice for me to be allowed to stay here for another period of time. What impact did this experience have on your future life? It has had various consequences. One of them was that it took away all fear of death. 100%. So I was allowed to experience that whenever we die, it will always happen at the right time when considering the soul level. No matter how old we will have grown when we die, no matter what we might have achieved or not, judging from the eye of physical man on a soul level, this is 100% authentic. This is certainly the main impact, first of all, but I was also allowed to experience that every day I am here is a gift of God. No matter if this day is good or difficult, or if I feel good or if I have a great problem, every day is a gift from God. And being aware that life will end at some point makes it worth living, so that I don't delay or put off doing important things, and that I can experience daily life here consciously and enjoy it whenever possible. That's it. You have been able to see spirit beings for some time already. Yes, this ability developed step by step. First, I only could see my grandfather, and first the situation was left at that. And gradually the number of appearances became steadily increasing, and during the last few years I was fortunate to be able to really keep on working on myself in order to refine and train my senses, so that now I can really see the spiritual world very clearly, very well, through various channels, various means. I can perceive it visually, I can perceive it through the spoken word, or through a variety of noises I am shown, through odors, depending upon what I am able to perceive in a specific moment. When did this ability start to develop? This was about 10 years ago and has become more and more strong. And well, first I've applied this ability only for my own uses in order to identify and deal with the topics of my life and in order to put things straight in my life. And later, I felt the need and the desire to share it with other people, in part on the basis of personal consultations or courses. What is the most important knowledge which you have gained from this near-death experience? In my specific case, it was the insight that when we die, we are neither torn away from this world, nor do we leave it, but we return home, and that was great for me. So we go back to our home when leaving this earth, so to speak. Miss Bögli, thank you very much for the interview. It was my pleasure.